You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Pizza Quest. This episode was recorded on location in Atlantic City during this year's Northeast Pizza and Pasta and Bakery Expo. Over the course of 2 days, I got the chance to interview a number of luminaries in the pizza and baking world, deliver educational presentations, and talk to the judges at both the pizza and the bagel competitions. Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, still here at the Northeast Pizza, Pasta, and Bakery Expo in Atlantic City. We've been spending the last couple of days talking to a lot of really cool people here, doing presentations and judging bagels and pizzas and all sorts of things. And I'm sitting at the table right now with two, I think, super influential bakers, but then a rising star in the baking community. So I'm going to introduce them. Rachel Wyman of Montclair Bakery. It's a bakery.
So it was Montclair Bread Company for 10 years.
Montclair, New Jersey.
And now it is called Rabble Rise Donuts.
Rabble Rise Donuts.
Yeah.
And that's how I know Rachel from years back as sort of one of the pioneer queens of the artisan donut business.
Yeah,
Donuts
yeah.
weren't the only thing you're doing, but it wasn't even your only presentation here at the show. You were doing things on breads and stuff as well.
Brioche, community building.
So Rachel's really an important, influential baker and kind of I would call a barometer of things to know about that are coming. And then Bryan Ford is sitting here also, who's again a huge rising star influencer and baker who has moved from Florida, where you were making your name and doing books and baking, and now I've moved to New York and are looking towards opening a bakery where, in the city itself?
Yeah, in the city itself.
So Bryan, thank you so much for, because I didn't even realize you were going to be here at the show.
I know.
And you're here with Serhan,
last
right?
minute arrival to support my good friend Serhan.
And Serhan Ayhan is here also, who will be, you've been hovering on the edges of the pizza world and making a big impact, like on Instagram and everywhere else.
Sure,
You're a social media guy, but I know you're going to open your own place, right?
Well, not in the cards right now. My family was in the business for over 20 years.
There you go.
It'll be in the back of the bakery, Serhan,
right.
by the
Oh,
slice.
there you go. So Serhan's pop-up at Bryan's Bakery.
A little bit of everything, jack of all trades, let's say. Working with Uni a little bit and, trying to carry my family's legacy in some way.
I see you on Instagram all the time.
Thank you, Peter.
Posting,
Thank you.
showing videos and stuff. And Bryan, let me just get back to you for a second. For those people who are listening who don't know who you are, man, there are probably only a few left who don't. Tell us a little bit about you. You're originally from where did you say from the?
I'm from New Orleans. My parents are from Honduras, Central America.
Okay.
And so I think my work just revolves on focusing on Latin American baked goods and breads, but I also make pizza and European style bread as well. And kind of like Serhan said, just jack of all trades is where I like to live. I like to kind of just dip my hand in all the jars as opposed to being hyper focused on one thing. But I don't know, I am getting older and I do have this kind of vision to specifically bake certain types of things and bring that to the community in New York.
The things that you want to bake are more Latin influenced?
Yeah, I think, well, at the end of the day, if you think about like colonization and how the world came to be, it's,
Right.
The influence from Africa or Europe into Central and South America is, that's historically based. You can't really change that. I think a lot of people don't realize outside of a European influence that like traditions have evolved and it's kind of transcended that identity of just like, oh, like, you know, these French colonists like showed us how to like make this bread. And this is a long, long time ago, but now that particular bread, it's very much Mexican. It's very, you know, it's about showcasing the deep tradition that's evolved over that time. But also, like, I make pizza. You know, it's I respect all breads, really. I make jokes, I make posts or whatever, and people think I hate croissants or whatever. I don't. I think I like it all. I like everything.
How could anyone hate a croissant? unless you just are not a Francophile, you know, you just anything French.
If you just don't like butter.
Right. I'm sure there's somebody out there who doesn't like butter.
You know, there's a nutrition company that makes bars, like protein bars for athletes, but it's all natural ingredients and they taste like something you would make at home. It's called Picky bars. They're really good, but anytime you order from them, they send you a sticker that says "I heart carbs," and so we have "I heart carb" stickers everywhere. I love it too.
I mean, I heart carbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Bryan, you did one book already, and you're working on a second one now. What was the first book called? And
New
what's
World
it about?
Sourdough is the first book.
The World of Sourdoughs,
that came out in 2020, and I think what was interesting about it was I was kind of using my New Orleans upbringing and my Honduran roots to kind of be the catalyst for what the recipes were. And I think that, you know, when you see a coconut bread or, you know, you see a Bananas Foster sourdough or something, it's a little bit like, yo, what is this guy doing? So I think that was a little different. But my second book is 150 recipes from Latin America. It's pastries, desserts, sourdough, straight doughs, yeasted doughs, savory baking, empanadas. It's a wide variety of the vast world of Latin American baking in all 33 countries and the Caribbean as well. So took a couple years to kind of focus. As you know, I mean, books are tricky. As you know, books are tricky. And I think what's tricky about this is how do I represent the traditions of Latin America in my own voice? I mean, look, I haven't been to every single country, right? I mean, I don't want to be. I don't know. It's just tough because I want to represent a country's traditions the right way, but I also want to just have fun.
Yeah.
So I don't like to take myself too seriously, but when you write something in pages, like there's a certain amount of respect you need to put into it, research and talking to people. I think I put in an early version of making the. Should I wait for this to?
Well, we hear announcements coming in over the. I think they're starting to announce winners in the competition.
I made an early version of a golfeado, which is a Venezuelan baked good, and I put walnuts in it, and I got roasted for that. Venezuelans were like, dude, there are no walnuts in golfeados. I mean, I got roasted for it, and I was, it happens, right? You try to recipe test, you try to add a little texture, add a little sprinkle of something, but then it's like, hey, that's not what our culture does, and so you got to find a middle ground to creativity, but representing things the right way.
I mean, it's like the pizza guys who always say, what's a pizza, what's not a pizza, right? You do one deviation, and they all go crazy.
It's a fine line of like, how many people do I want to piss off?
Right.
I once got roasted by a German baker because in one of my books I talked about how the similarities between a panettone and a stollen, right? And I said so you could actually use one dough to make the other.
Right.
And oh man, he went after me big time. A stollen is not a panettone. They're nothing alike. And I said, well, they're a lot alike, but I'm not going to argue with you about it.
Exactly.
Because it's the connection that people have to those things is non-rational. It's emotional.
It's nostalgic.
I got roasted for not including weights in my book. And I made a conscious decision to do that. And it's funny because, 25 years ago when I was working at Amy's Bread, I was like, I would never, and Amy was working on her second book, and I was helping doing the recipe testing for that, and she was like so adamant about the weights going in, and I was like, I would never not put the weights in. I will never do volume measures in a book. And then I just published a book of all volume measures. Because I realized that my audience, the people on Instagram, the people, in my community who really connected with my recipes were scared at volume measures. And they were never going to buy a scale. And my mom is never going to buy a scale. And by even including the weights, it kind of makes it a little scary. And my goal in putting a book out there on breads and having yeast in recipes was to make it less scary for people like my mom, and I still have that audience and capture that audience, which is great. But yeah, I get roasted by the bread community for not.
That's it's interesting that you kind of flipped it back the other direction, because I started out with volume measure books because nobody was thinking about weights when I started writing cookbooks 100 years ago. But then it got to be like what Amy was saying is as the bread baking community, the artisan community developed, and we became super conscious about ratios, and you can't do ratios in cups and spoons. You have to have weights. And in fact, then it wasn't enough to just put ounces and pounds. You had to put grams too.
Right.
So, and it's been a movement towards that, to where I can't think of anybody who do a bread book without doing it all in weights and ratios.
I'm the one.
So you're kind of like the throwback now.
Yeah.
And who knows? You may start a trend.
Right. Well, and in my book, it's called "We'll Run for Donuts."
We'll Run for Donuts.
Yeah, because my whole community is based around a running club that meets for donuts afterwards. It was I gave a lot of credit to my grandmother for planting the baking seed in me, and a lot of the recipes in the first chapter where I talk about things I grew up with were her recipes that I kind of adapted, and might have taken the margarine out and replaced it with butter. But she had it wasn't just a cup. She had this little aluminum cup container. It probably wasn't even a full cup measure that all of her recipes were based on. That cup.
Her tool. That was her tool. I was going to say, I'm thinking if you're using a grandma recipe, then you have to say a handful and a quarter of a scoop of flour,
and a glug.
And a glug of buttermilk.
It's like the old school pizzerias where they take the tomato can, they draw the line on the can, and they're like, this is the amount of water you put in there.
That right? Yeah.
There's your measurement.
Well, what was old is new again.
And Bryan, I think you came up with the kind of new class of people on social media that are aware of weights and measures and super accepting of that. And I had tried to share recipes in weights and measures. I teach baking classes, and everything's in weights and measures. But when I started throwing up my grandma's recipes on Instagram that are in cups and teaspoons and stuff, it just went crazy, and so many people started connecting with it. And I think, when people got in the kitchen during COVID, who had never been in a kitchen before, and it kind of, they started experimenting with things that they would have never done before. People that would have never dreamed of baking. My friends from corporate America who ordered everything that they ever ate in life from somewhere else, started baking at home. And so I just wanted to make it approachable for them, and they made it, and it's been great.
I think it's a great
strategy. They're not still
strategy.
baking, their sourdough's dead.
Oh, their sourdoughs are dead.
But
it's a great strategy. I worked on my book for 2 years. I submitted the manuscript last month, and I was Serhan knows this story, I was anxiously waiting comments, from the editor, and the first thing he does, sorry Michael if you're listening to this, I love you though, he's like, hey, I think we need to include cups and spoons. And I was like, got it. Let me go back and redo everything. That includes, I do everything in grams. My first book's all in grams, but to your point, there's really nothing wrong with it. It's not something I'm used to. I had to go buy measuring cups. But there's a whole world of people out there. How about this? There's a whole country of people out there that are using cups and spoons, and there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what they do, and we can reach them that way, then let's do it.
There's a big thing in pizza and baking, all about consistency, right? Getting everything the right measurement. But I think more and more I'm realizing that intuition is a big thing that people want to develop and need to apply to their baking and pizza making.
And that's what our grandparents, our grandmothers knew how. They had the intuition. They didn't need the grams. They just knew when it felt right. But that's a hard thing to teach.
Right.
But there is a nostalgia for that.
Yeah.
And a way to stay connected to your own family heritages and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Serhan, how did you and Bryan get to know each other?
Actually, through a mutual friend who's a baker right in Astoria. Bryan came to one of my pop-ups that I was doing at my family's pizzeria years ago. A baker named Sarah Hoffman, who runs Phoenix Bakehouse.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this was maybe 2019.
2019.
He came.
I pulled up. I was like, yo, who's this Turkish dude with the, you know what I'm saying, with the Detroit pizza, man?
I was doing a Detroit-style pizza pop-up out of my family's pizzeria.
So
I was
good.
milling the grains fresh. I was doing a poolish, all this, as best Detroits I could put out. Bryan came to one of those back then, and we connected. And then years later, was it the following year? Bryan moved to Queens.
Yeah.
And we've been, hanging out ever since, exchanging ideas. I would say I bake bread from a pizza baker's perspective. Bryan makes pizza from a bread maker's perspective. So we're,
it's a intertwined. It's a happy relationship. The bread and pizza thing, right?
And we're able to learn from each other.
I learn a lot, like from Serhan and stuff like that, because it's more of the pizza mind versus like that kind of bread forward mind. But I'm starting to learn. Maybe you are too. It's the same thing, really. It's
all semantics, right? Like you call something a pizza, you call croissant, media luna, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
that one. It was since you mentioned Turkish. Is your family?
My family's from Turkey.
So let me ask you something, because I just recently became aware of a product that I didn't know about.
Sure.
That someone said is a Turkish pizza called a lahmacun.
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 Yes.
So is that what it is? Is that and what is it?
It's a thin bread, let's say. It's topped with minced meat and spices, but you can see it throughout Armenia. Some say it has Arab roots as well. So it's from that part of the world.
And is it eaten flat or is it rolled up and eaten?
Usually you'll top it after it's baked. You'll put chopped parsley, tomatoes, red onions, sumac, lemon juice. You'll roll it up and you can tear it apart. They have it with a yogurt drink called ayran, which is just, water and yogurt, a little salt. So it's common in Turkey, Armenia.
That sounds like kind of like a lassi type drink. Is that?
Kind of, yeah. Lassi, I would say usually you'll see like mango lassi.
Mango lassi.
I would say it's like maybe a cousin of that drink. But it's very popular in that part of the world. Like when I went to Little Armenia in Los Angeles, all the Armenian bakeries there, they had lahmacun, and I felt right at home.
So all of a sudden sometimes you don't hear about anything, then you hear about it once, and then all of a sudden you notice it everywhere. So it seems like this is, to me, when that happens, I go, okay, it's on my radar. Now I want to try to track this down. And the friend who told me about it, he's in LA, and he's going on a lahmacun quest of his own, and he's trying to find.
I was so happy
he sent me some great photos. And it looks
incredible.
awesome.
Yeah, incredible stuff there.
So you see some opportunity there to bring products like that out. I mean, and in a way, it goes to what you were saying, Bryan, about connecting with heritage type, foods.
I do want to explore my family's heritage to my baking a lot more. There's stuff from Turkey's a big country, so you have stuff on kind of the western side, which is where my mom is from, and my dad's actually Kurdish, so he's from like the southeast mountains, and it's like borders like Iran, Iraq. So there's a completely different baking tradition from there, and stuff that's not even made in ovens, right? They do it on like a saj kind of type of oven. I don't know how familiar with that kind of baking method, but it's like a large skillet that you'll put the bread on.
Is it kind of curved?
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of like a lavash almost. It's like kind of related to that, I believe. So leavened breads.
Is the crust for a lahmacun leavened or unleavened?
You know what? I originally wanted to make it a leavened bread.
Everybody, please.
And I think this is when I was kind of like on a sourdough kick, where I wanted to ferment everything, and I was finding I wasn't getting that nostalgic taste out of it. And my mom was like, "You got to do it without yeast. You got to do," and I was like, "Oh, why do I have to do that?" And like now I'm thinking, like, she was right. It has to be. It might work well as an unleavened bread.
Yeah.
I went through a phase of making tortillas with sourdough, just because I was on that like, oh, ma, check this out.
Yeah.
My mom was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, but
and then I was like, you're right, because like, why am I? It's just, it doesn't come out the same.
I think experiences like that kind of like opened my mind to when talking about my mom here. I made her a Neapolitan pizza once, and she hated it. And I'm like, and she's like, oh, it's not cooked. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I think it was my shortcoming of not realizing that she had a different palate, right? She was used to stuff like
exactly.
Yeah, she moved to New York here in the '80s. She had like New York style pizza. She had lahmacun back in Turkey. She liked the crispier type of thing. So I have to be mindful that there are different ways to leaven a bread or unleavened bread. There's different flours. There's different palates, and how do we cater to that?
Well, I want to just pivot this around to the donut world with you, Rachel, because donuts themselves are being redefined, as we speak, and you've been a part of that. And there's cake and yeasted donuts, right?
Right.
So what do you see? Number one, what do you see happening there, and what are some of the controversial kind of aspects of that whole donut renaissance?
Well, I maybe I'm creating the controversy. I'm not sure. I'm trying to rid the world of the bagged mix.
The bagged mix.
You know, like stop just adding water. Please make it yourself.
Yeah.
It's too easy. That's one of the things I was talking about here today at the conference is how easy it is to make the dough, and you don't need to use a bagged mix. And so as far as the cake and yeasted thing goes, it's super regional. And it's not like everyone in the Northeast likes this kind of donut. It's like pockets of preferences. And not everybody likes the same kind of donut. And then I'm definitely seeing people get more creative with their yeasted dough, which I've been trying to push for years. Make a chocolate brioche, make an apple brioche, get creative with the dough because it shows that you're not just adding water to a mix. And really setting yourself apart. There's a lot of sourdough. Some of those are they still incorporate milk and eggs and all of that. I'm making a sourdough that's just flour, water, salt, little bit of palm sugar to it, so it's a vegan sourdough.
But it's a sourdough donut.
Oh yeah, sour donut.
Sour donut.
Yeah.
And it's a fried donut.
It's fried.
Is frying, I mean, you have baked donuts as well as fried donut, but is frying, it's kind of like with bagels. You have boiled bagels and then you have steamed bagels. And a lot of people say if it's not boiled, then it's not really a bagel. But with donuts, you could go either way, right? It could be baked or fried without running afoul of the donut police or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and I like to see bakers incorporating donuts any way they can. So not everybody can fry a donut in their course of production. Yeah. So if they can make a baked donut, that's cool. It's however you can reach your audience. And you were just
telling me earlier today, you were describing a type of baked donut. You said it's one of the best donuts you've ever tasted. My first thought
it was that was fried.
Oh, it was fried. I thought it was. I thought it was
no,
a bagel.
You
said cake donut. I thought.
Do right donuts in Chicago. It's a crumb cake donut.
Crumb cake. Oh, crumb cake. So the topping was the crumb.
And it has like a layer of cinnamon through the dough. Again, a very unique dough itself.
Well, I can breathe a little easier now because when you said one of the best donuts I ever tasted, and you said it was a crumb cake donut, I thought I've never had a cake donut that I would put in the top pantheon of donuts.
Yeah. Can I just add something? Like you're talking about like different names and styles for things. I think of donuts, but things like churros or like
absolutely.
there's like things
exactly
like,
what I'm talking about.
There's like tulumba in
There's
Turkey.
Donuts in every culture called under different names.
You don't think it's
like
donuts. Exactly, right?
Beignets.
The
best.
That's one of
Sorry, we're going to let that background noise just go. We can talk over it because we're on the mic.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the things that I mentioned in my trends workshop too, is in not just incorporating different cultural desserts into the donut. So you could take something like a tres leches and make a tres leches donut.
Yeah.
Or you could take an ingredient like ube and use it in a unique way that's all your own.
Yeah.
But you're incorporating an ingredient from another culture. So there's lots of different ways to play with those cultural trends and highlight them.
Well, Bryan, you mentioned beignets, and you're New Orleans-based kind of guy. There's, I think, the fusion of people who are not from that area about what is the right dough to use for a beignet. I've seen beignets that were made with brioche. I've seen beignets made with different. But isn't a beignet more of a pâte à choux type dough, or what?
No,
what is the right dough for a
beignet?
beignet?
It's a leavened dough. I don't know. I make mine with milk, evaporated milk, sourdough, fresh yeast. Look, at the end of the day, it's all about the texture and the interior. Like, however you achieve it, I don't really care.
So is it a wet dough that you dollop it into the fat?
No,
or?
It's cut into squares. There's machines. So you'll put the sheet of dough on it after it's rested, and the machine will just like pop up and cut it into squares, and you dump them into the fryer.
Oh, okay. So it's solid enough, firm enough.
I think it's like an overnight cold fermentation usually, and then after that cold fermentation, you let it come to temperature. You divide it into some squares. Once it's to temperature, like room temperature, you divide it and you fry it immediately. But that's, I'm not speaking for master. I don't know what they do in Café Du Monde. I have no clue. I have no insight. I have no idea. I don't care.
What when you serve your beignets, you dust them with powdered sugar? Do you pour syrup over them?
You gotta have a beignet bag, man. You gotta have a bag full of powdered sugar, and you just shake them up in there.
And then do you have to have it with chicory coffee? I mean, it's that.
I mean, look, I'm not gonna when you go to Cafe Du Monde and you have the chicory coffee and the beignets, that's a nostalgic moment.
Yeah,
It's a classic moment. It's a traditional moment. But you could have it with any kind of coffee.
They kind of define the concept, but even though it's their own unique take on it.
I mean, you gotta have the powdered sugar, I would say. I mean, it would be kind of strange to just eat beignet dough uncovered. I don't even know if that's a thing.
I would think one option would be some kind of a syrup of some sort, but then again, because I'm thinking of Greek donuts like
Lukumades.
Yeah, Lukumades, which
finish
with a honey syrup.
Yeah, exactly.
But they remind me so much of
donuts
and beignets. Yeah.
Rachel was mentioning building community and doing different kinds of cultural inspired donuts. I just want to mention From Cora Donuts in Woodside, Queens by Kimberly Camarada. She's been making Filipino inspired donuts since she started out of her home during the pandemic and just exploded. She does ube donuts, tres leches, I believe, churro donuts, and she'll, the order window will open, I think, on Monday at 3 p.m. and it'll sell in seconds. And she has so much support from
there's an
so many
appetite
people.
for it. There's
it's
an
incredible.
appetite
They're beautiful donuts. They're inspired by her culture from her grandmother.
Doesn't it seem like we're in a time in history right now where culturally linked products that are part of these fried dough products, but directly related to are having their moment in a new way, that they're going mainstream even.
Well, I think the big trend that we're seeing in food in general is the storytelling. And so when consumers can connect with your story or a story, they're also connecting with your food. They want to know that there's a bigger significance to it than just a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
And so that's across all mediums of food.
So that may be the connecting thread to all this. Yeah, because I've never seen so much. I have a thing called Pizza Quest, right, which is an easy concept to say, everyone wants to look for a perfect pizza. But now you got people having these very specific quests, like I was saying, the Lamuchin quest, or it could be anything as generic as a taco, but more specific. The Momo quest or whatever. And these ethnic foods or culturally connected foods seem to be where the juice is right now.
I mean, pizza was kind of my gateway drug into the pizza world and baking and the old kinds of pizza styles. But now I do want to explore my heritage and Turkish, Kurdish, Middle Eastern inspired breads. So,
well, if there was ever a time to do it, it would be now.
I think so. Yeah. I'm trying to learn it. I'm trying to, we were talking about measurements before. I try to look for exact measurements, right? 100 grams, whatever. They're all cups, and it varies from country to country, right? What's a cup here might be somewhere else. It's use a Turkish teacup, amount of water. I'm what does that even mean? How many grams is that?
Well, and not only that, but after you start doing it for years and making the same recipe day in and day out for years and years, you'll notice your flour has inconsistencies, your sugar has inconsistencies. So your recipe's always evolving and changing, and it can't be an exact. Because the second you're married to an exact, something changes. You have to be able to change that too. So that's where the little bit of this, little bit of that actually helps, and the intuition.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear number one that that you're what is it called now? Rabble Rise. Mm-hmm. Rabble Rise. What's different? Why the name change, and what does that change signify?
So I opened as Montclair Bread Company 10 years ago, or 11 years ago.
Pretty vanilla, right?
Yeah. Because, I really lacked the confidence to go out, with something crazy and new, And I hadn't made a donut yet. So donuts didn't start until 6 months after I opened as a bread bakery. And then they quickly became. Sorry, these announcements.
It's hard to talk with all this sound going on.
So then donuts quickly became 90% of the business.
Wow.
And have held strong as 90% of the business. And I felt that continuing as Montclair Bread Company was really doing me a disservice, and I was being overlooked for the thing that I do best, which are donuts. And I also opened a second location in the Hudson Valley, and I wanted them both to be the same. And to do that, I had to remove the location from the name.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's an interesting, part of the story is how you're going to market it, how you're going to make it distinctly your own too.
And so then what I did, I consolidated the breads and went back to that kind of farmer's market style of only offering them one day, and we're doing pre-orders for them, and we have a monthly subscription to the breads. So we make all of the breads on one day, and we don't have to waste any of them because they're already spoken for, and our customer base can still get bread, but it's not a lost leader anymore.
Well, and Bryan, do you have a name yet for your bakery, a working title?
New World Bakery, probably.
New World Bakery.
My second book's New World Baking.
There you go.
And
there's a connection right there.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of, obviously the New World being what the colonists found when they showed up. And I think it's just a little play on words.
New World, and do you have a target of when you think you'll be open to the public?
I have no clue.
No, you're still working on it.
I don't know. Hopefully in a year. I can't really say. I'm in certain stages that can take a while, so it's just getting things right at the beginning and then find the right location. And
so we're really early in the early stages.
Yeah, it's very early, but I'm speaking it into existence everywhere to kind of force myself to do it.
Well, actually having a name like New World, you already have a vision for it, of what it's going to be about, why for existing, and what are some of the products that people should be looking forward to seeing there that they might not be everyday products?
I just did a bake sale at the New York what was it? New York Times Food Festival, and I was doing semitas, which are a Honduran pan dulce, and I think it was interesting to see how people reacted to it because they didn't know what it was, and there was quite a few people that actually just turned away anytime I said this is a Central American whatever. They'd be like, whatever. Yeah. They'd literally just be like, I don't want that. I think that's a fun game to play and a fun journey to embark on. To kind of I grew up eating semitas. It's a nice round, semi-sweet, buttery roll covered in a sugar coating, almost like a concha.
Yes.
To be honest, most people are familiar with Mexican
concha. It looks like a concha,
so it'd be interesting to make those with regional grains and with crazy fermentations or media lunas similar to a croissant, and try to have fun with those. You look at Supermoon Bakehouse, you look at croissants being reimagined as something else.
Right.
Why can't we do that with some of the Latin American baked goods that are out there?
And that's in light of what you said earlier. You can do it if you're willing to withstand the blowback from the traditionalists.
Yeah, that's okay.
But what you're creating is kind of a neo-traditional wave. Yeah.
I think without blowback, I think blowback is our friend in a way. I think
that's good to
thought-provoking, something to get people to really actually just be like, I don't want that. And it's I don't think you don't want it. I think you just don't understand it. And if I can help you understand it, you're definitely going to want it.
Yeah, and I think if there is blowback, the first response has to be, I'm so glad you care this much.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You're 100% right. So I'll be curious to see. Obviously, whenever it opens, y'all will be there.
We'll keep our eye out for it.
Have a little party. But yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing about that, and hopefully next time I see you at one of these events or when I'm in the city in New York, to get updates on all
100%.
that. Yeah. And
you got it.
And how far along is the book?
It should be completely done in the next month or so and off to print. So it's been 2 years of writing and researching, and I got to, do some edits on I'm sure it's going to be all marked up when I get it back.
Well, a lot of people who haven't written books don't realize how long it takes to get a book from concept to. But even after you've written the book and turned it in, you still got at least a 1 year wait before it's going to hit the.
I've been taking a small break from it, but I know I got another month and a half or 2 months of just diving right back into it 100%. But it should be out October 2023. So in about a year.
1 year. That's all right. Yep. Well, then you were. If you're getting ready to turn it in, then you're on target.
Yeah.
And Rachel, you have a book, right?
Yeah, I do.
What's your book called?
We'll Run for Donuts.
Oh, We'll Run for Donuts.
Yep.
And it's out and
it's
available.
out. It was released last October. It came
So it's
out.
been out
so
a year.
it's exactly a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what else? Are you working on another round of another book
not
project?
yet. I have
It
some
takes so
ideas,
much out of you to do
but
a
it
book.
does. It takes a lot out of you.
It takes everything.
Especially when you're running a business.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Trying to keep kids in virtual school or whatever that was. So now they're back in school, and I have some time. So yeah, I have a couple ideas that are kind of more on the business end of baking and helping to coach people through that process. That's also a scary thing that shouldn't be so scary.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my next chapter is less of recipes and more development.
Well, that's good because that puts you in a different role. Then also you become again a mentor, somebody who's been there, done that the next generation. And it all seems so new to all of us. I'm older than you guys, but I still feel like I'm still just a starter and a beginner. And because time goes so fast.
Right.
But then before you know it, there's one and two generations of new people coming into it. Here's your daughter sitting behind us.
I know.
She's who knows if she'll go into this, but she could represent the whole next generation.
Oh, totally. She can braid challah better than anybody else on my team.
There you go.
She's since she was old enough to see over the table.
Right. And then so at some point, you're going to be the one that she or her people of her generation are looking to.
Yeah,
to show me how to do this and guide me.
In fact, she got to do a stage at Johnson & Wales in Rhode Island.
In Providence,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Yep. Chef Miskovich invited her up.
One
she
of
got
our
to
regular
spend a whole
friends
day.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to talk to her when we go off air. I'm going to talk to her.
Yeah, I got to teach a donut workshop to the instructors at Johnson & Wales.
Fantastic. Wonderful.
In May, and she came up with me and got to spend a whole day. So she's on track.
All right.
Take over the world.
We're waiting for. Well, we'll have her on the next podcast.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I really want to thank you for joining us today and wish you the best of success in projects coming, books coming, and moving into another. We'll call it an additional role of your repertoire of not only doing it but teaching other people how to do it. So Rachel, thank you.
Thank you.
And it's always good to come to these conferences and events because you get to see people who you've been tracking and getting to know, and every time you see them, we're all in a different stage of our unfolding, and it's cool. Serhan, I'm waiting for that pop-up to become a brick and mortar, or you and Bryan together to create something totally new.
Yeah, why not?
And get those lamachin out there. I think that
Peter, I'll make you a lamachin.
you have to. Yeah, I want an authentic lamachin. But I can't imagine not having it in your operation. I mean, making it available to the public, because I think there's a window for products like that now, in a way, a receptivity, just as there are with things from the Latin cultures.
100%.
That people are wanting that. They want to be able to connect vicariously to a culture that's not their own.
Correct.
Through the foods of that culture.
Correct.
By somebody who's authentically bringing it to them.
100%.
So
thank you so much for having me, Peter.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for being part of Pizza Quest. We'll be back next week with another episode, probably recorded right here an hour ago or whatever. We're going to just keep getting as many episodes in as possible. But then after we run out of episodes filmed or recorded here, we'll be just doing more virtual Zoom interviews and going back to some of our video interviews that also then reappear as audio podcasts.
I love those, by the way.
HRN.
I loved watching those during COVID, especially like Ceramitic and like all my favorite pizza makers. It was a lot of fun to watch those.
Thanks. It was like again, like a lot of us, something was born out of an unexpected situation, COVID and the lockdown. Then we came up with these Zoom shows that then turned into the book Pizza Quest, that then has brought us back here to keep the circle going. Right. So thank you, and thanks for being part of our world. Thank all of you for listening. See you next time on Pizza Quest. That's it for this episode. If you want to hear more of our coverage from the Northeast Pizza and Pasta and Baking Expo, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.